MX is really well positioned to be your one-stop shop solution for your organization to meet the state data sharing requirements and to deliver the information you need to improve care, enhance health, and lower costs. Speaking of lowering costs, there is now officially a very exciting opportunity for many organizations to apply for and to receive state funding to subsidize contracting with and connecting to MX as your go-to partner for complying with and benefiting from the data sharing agreement. So for those of you who attended our last webinar a couple of weeks ago, focused on these DSA Signatory Grants, this will serve as a quick refresher along with some important updates. For those who are joining our discussion of these grants for the first time, I highly encourage you to go back and view the recording of that webinar, which can be found on our DxF resources page. Now, because that recording is available, I won't go over again all of the funding amounts, the criteria, and the various moving parts of that grant program. I do want to make clear upfront that depending on the size of your organization, these DSA grants may or may not fully cover everything that a hospital, a health plan, or a large IPA needs to fully onboard with MX. However, it will definitely offset a substantial portion of those costs of implementing the data streams that Brittany just highlighted. So with that, what I'll quickly highlight here is that there are two pathways to choose from in terms of applying for the DSA signatory grants. The first type on the left here is the so-called assisted pathway known as a QHIO onboarding grant. And it is meant to pay for exactly what it sounds like, the costs of, for the first time, connecting with a qualified health information organization that will be designated by the state in the coming months as having demonstrated their ability to help DSA signatories meet requirements to exchange or make health and social service information available. Now, as Adam mentioned, MX fully intends to apply and be selected as a QHIO as soon as the state officially opens the application. Now, the issue is that the state has not yet posted an application. And the latest that we've heard in terms of timing is that the QHIOs won't be announced and selected until July at the very earliest. Again, we have the utmost confidence that we will earn that QHIO distinction before the end of this year. But we understand that the timing mismatch between the QHIO onboarding grants and the actual QHIO program may give some pause for some of you who would want some absolute clarity on the status of your chosen HIO. So in that case, you might instead take a close look at the other grant pathway that the state is offering, which is the technical assistance grant. Now it says here, this is the so-called build your own solution pathway. But actually, if you choose MX, the way we would describe it is let's build it together. So functionally, you can apply to fund the exact same purpose of signing up with MX as you would under a QHIO onboarding grant. But from that point on, there are a couple of key differences, and at least from where we're sitting, some potential advantages for considering the TA route. First, while all the funds from the QHIO onboarding grant go straight to the QHIO, under the TA grant, the funding comes directly back to you, the grantee, so that you can procure the resources that you need to be able to comply with the DSA. Second, while a grantee would use at least part of these funds in either case to subsidize the cost of connecting and establishing data feeds and interfaces so that you can share information through MX, you can also, under the TA grant, identify and apply for funding for other needs that are related to your DSA compliance, such as training your teams in the workflows needed to fully onboard and use our services so that we can maximize our support for you to share claims or clinical information as permitted and required with other DSA participants. And lastly, the actual process of applying for the TA grant is, to be candid, in our view, simpler and more straightforward compared to the QHIO onboarding grant. I'll get to that in a bit, but first, if we can move to the next slide. Since we held our previous webinar a couple of weeks ago, there has been a lot of significant developments from the state agencies that are administering the DxF. First and foremost, the online grant application portal is now open. It is hosted on a general website called Grants Connect, And in the interest of time, I am not going to walk through in detail the process of how to log in and submit a grant application to that portal. Instead, I'm going to direct you to the links in the chat for all of the various resources that the Center for Data Insights and Innovation in the state government has put out to describe all the parameters of the grant program, as well as the step-by-step process for applying to either funding pathway that is available. Now, for now, the thing to focus on this slide is that we have just begun round 1 of the applications, which will run through June 17th, followed by round 2 immediately, which closes on July 15th. These are 2 lightning fast rounds that are limited to those that are required under the law to sign the DSA and implement by January 31st of 2024. Again, those are hospitals, physician organizations and medical groups, health plans and insurers, clinical laboratories, and skilled nursing facilities. Now, what about counties? I know that we have a fair number in the audience who are attending today, which is wonderful. The great news for counties is that as soon as July 1st, a 3rd round of funding applications opens for all types of DSA signatories, including those that are considered voluntary, like county health departments and social service agencies. I want to emphasize that we at MX have a stellar track record of serving several counties in Southern and Central California today, and that we are very eager to work with more to meet your needs of being both DSA compliant and also to benefit from data sharing, whether it's for your public health infrastructure, behavioral health integration, CalAIM, and other county priorities. As a matter of fact, there will be at least one upcoming webinar in which we demo some of the various use cases on how MX's services and applications can support counties. And it should coincide very nicely with this 3rd round of funding, which will run for almost 3 months, as opposed to just 1 month for each of the first 2 rounds. We can move to the next slide, please. So now that the application is live for the grants, what's in it and what do you need to provide? Well, there are a whole host of questions about identifying your need for a technology solution to comply with the DSA, coming up with a line item budget, along with justifying that need through a narrative, et cetera. Now, just hearing me talk about this and reading through all of the components of the application on the slide may feel daunting or even overwhelming, and that's totally understandable. You're all busy running practices, running a health plan, a hospital department, we get it. That's why we at MX are very happy to offer, if you decide to join us and to pursue a TA or a Q-Hire onboarding grant, to do all of the heavy lifting to prepare the proposal for you, up to the point where practically the only thing your organization needs to do is to sign the application and hit send. Now, what this means is that for the portions of the application that ask you to specifically describe how you will use the funds to leverage MX services to exchange data and to achieve better outcomes under the DSA, we will provide you with all of the relevant numbers and the pre-written narratives as boilerplate template responses to plug into your application. Not only will we go over and develop the contents of your application with you and for you, but we'll also co-strategize with you on how to package and submit the application to maximize your best chances for a funding award. For example, many of you may be individual practices that are part of an IPA or members of your regional medical association. We at MX have great partnerships with those types of multifaceted organizations. And in fact, those entities can band together as what is called an umbrella applicant for these grants and have their proposals receive a higher score for demonstrating efficiencies of scale. Another way that we can help is to ascertain whether you qualify for an enhanced funding amount of grant funding by being located in an underserved area as defined by the grant program's guidelines. And we can do this because our Crackerjack MX data team has the geomapping tools overlaid with census and other demographic data to help make that determination. Now, of course, some of you may have a highly sophisticated sense of how you want to present your DSA needs and how working with MX can help fulfill that in your application. And instead of just using our off-the-shelf template, you may want to customize your responses to reflect characteristics and activities that are really unique about how your organization can be supported through our platform. In those situations, we are more than happy to meet you where you are at and offer to advise, review, and provide suggestions for your draft application. Next slide, please. Now, earlier I mentioned that the process for applying for a QHIO onboarding grant may be somewhat less streamlined compared to the TA grant. Now, the reason for this is that the QHIO grant requires applicants to work with an organization called the California Association of Health Information Exchanges, or CAHI for short. And CAHI has been contracted by the state and is intended to serve as sort of a supportive middleman, corresponding with you and collecting information from your organization and filling out and submitting your onboarding grant application on your behalf. So there's a good chance that for an organization that already knows what they'll be requesting resources for and who they want to partner with for their DSA technology needs, that the process will be slower and may be a bit more cumbersome by having CAHI manage your application. Now, while working with CAHI could be helpful for applicants that otherwise have no direct contact or support from their HIO that they want to partner with, that is not at all how we intend to operate, like I just described. Again, we have deep experience in successfully applying for past state and federal grant programs to help our new participants get the full benefit of our services, especially those that are safety net providers who are lower resourced to begin with. And we will draw upon the expertise to craft the strongest possible application to meet your needs. All of this is to say that with Amex at your elbow, you really don't need CAHI's assistance in applying, and their involvement for the QHIO onboarding grant could actually slow things down in the submission process somewhat. And it's for these reasons that at this point, at least for the time being, we do think that it makes more sense to pursue a TA grant with MX as your chosen technology solution. Now, unlike the QHIO onboarding grant, you, the applicant, will directly fill out and submit the application in the portal rather than having, again, to go through CAHI. By using, adapting, and directly submitting the template that we'll provide, the process could go quicker and simpler than having to go through an extra layer of CAHI managing the application on your behalf. Next slide, please. Now, all that said, I do want to underscore that we really want to work with you on whichever option you choose, and that we will gladly provide you with a templated response for both the TA grant and the QHIO onboarding grant, if that's your preference. The QHIO onboarding grant does permit you to list your intended HIO partner, even though the qualifications won't be announced until later this summer. And you can certainly put down MX. And in the extremely unlikely, but theoretically not impossible event that Amex does not end up getting chosen as a QHIO, your QHIO onboarding grant will automatically switch to being a TA grant without your having to take any further action. Next slide, please. Okay, so to recap, here is your to-do list to take back to your teams after viewing this webinar. 1, make sure to sign the DSA. It's the right thing to do to share information for a better whole person care. And for many of your organizations, it's the law. And you need to sign to be eligible to apply for the grant funding that we just talked about. Next, rewatch this and our previous webinar and go through the state resources that we linked in the chat, in particular that grant guidance document. Use those resources to help you determine whether you may be eligible for these grants. I'll give you a tip. If you are already a full-fledged MX participant contributing data to us, chances are that you may not be able to access this type of funding since you are already complying with the DSA and you don't need further health IT resources to do so. But if you determine that you are eligible or you have questions as to whether you might be, then come talk to us. Actually, depending on who and where you are in the state, we might actually get to you first, either through Adam's growth team or some of the partnerships that we're exploring with the regional medical associations and foundations to do proactive outreach with the practices and health plans that we think stand to greatly benefit from joining MX and pursuing this grant funding. After we talk, and if it becomes clear that you're a strong candidate for a grant, we will work hand in hand with you anywhere from advising to filling out much of what you or your representative organization will need for the application. Next, submit the application, whether it's a TA grant, as we're currently recommending, or QHIO onboarding grant, in which case you have to remember you have to formally contact KHI to start the application process on your behalf. Either way, make sure that you put us down as your intended technology vendor or QHIO, so that once the application is approved, we can hit the ground running in getting the deliverables that you need to accomplish the milestones to receive the money. Make sure you do this as soon as you're ready. Again, with us at your side, we will get you there much quicker so that you can get your application in within the first 2 rounds if you're a mandatory DSA signatory. There's no guarantee that there will be further funding opportunities after the 3rd round closes this fall, so you definitely want to act fast. Lastly, but not least, stay in the know for this and all other things DxF related by following us on Twitter and LinkedIn, signing up for our newsletter and other communications that are delivered straight to your inbox, and visiting the dedicated DxF resources page on our website. By doing so, you'll get notifications about our future webinars, such as our next one on June 8th, which is all about the health data utility model. Now, this is directly related and an excellent follow-up to everything that we just covered on how MX can meet your DSA needs and more. That's because in our view, serving our communities as a potential qualified health information organization and being what we refer to as a health data utility are really one and the same. But don't take it from me. Tune in for what promises to be a fascinating discussion between our CEO, Erica Galvez, and leaders from the national and statewide networks that MX is proud to partner with in ways that embody what being a health data utility is all about. I know I'm looking forward to it, and I hope to see all of you there as well.